Oh, to be a fly on the wall the next time these two brothers have a conversation. Imagine waiting 70 years to become king and you inherit all of this baggage. I would be pissed. While likely very frustrating, Charles isn't completely innocent himself. Judging by his many questionable friendships throughout his own lifetime, he doesn't seem to have a stark aversion of predators or even convicted offenders. Now, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Sarah Ferguson's friendships with Jeffrey Epstein were not unknown to the royal family, although, in light of recent events, some people are just becoming privy to them. Prior to the most recent information, Andrew and Sarah were friends with Epstein for many years following his 2008 conviction for being a sex offender. There are also reported instances of Andrew attempting to advocate for Epstein to his mother. Yes, Queen Elizabeth II. We're fully aware Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, Harvey Weinstein, and Kevin Spacey have all spent time at royal residences, with Maxwell and Spacey even getting photographed sitting on thrones. The question isn't whether Charles will support his brother. Although his victim-focused public statement may have been seen as his way of affirming his stance, reports have come out that Charles is moving Andrew into a more private residence. The question is actually, what will Charles do about it? How will he navigate this? Now, with Prince William and Prince Edward being mentioned in Epstein's emails for different reasons, the backlash seems to be growing. The questions are increasing, and every day appears to get one step closer to a massive fallout. What will be the breaking point? This was such a difficult live stream to put together, just the segments. We've been talking about all of the information that has come out since these emails from the files have been released. And we've been discussing just how many royals have been implicated in all of this. And I want to make sure I clarify every single time, although I don't like the bald-headed bastard. William was mentioned in the Epstein files and the emails only because at this point, up until this point, he was only mentioned because he was an ambassador for Wild Aid, which is a charity. It's an animal and environmentally friendly charity, and they accepted funds from Epstein well after his 2008 conviction for being a sex offender. And so the connection is stark, but then there are also other emails, which we discussed yesterday. There are also other emails that mention William and Epstein because of a British reporter doing some digging. And so we went through all of that, but I want to be clear when we say that he was in those emails, not for the same reasons at this point as Andrew. But then also a 12 or 13-year-old girl who submitted a complaint, an official complaint, listed Prince Edward as being at Little St. James Island, which was Epstein Island. She said he was there while she was being trafficked. So with all of the, and of course we have the whole Sarah Ferguson of it all. I mean, she seemed outright in love with that man. I can't say that she is, obviously, but she just seemed outright obsessed with him. Those emails were so hard to process at least for me. When I was reading that, I'm like, girl, pick your jaw up off the floor. Not just because, girl, why are you fawning over anyone this much? It's embarrassing. But you are literally fawning over a predator. Now, I am not making any accusations. I'm only speaking about what is out there and what I've seen and giving my opinion on it. But one thing I will say is birds of a feather flock together. And my friends, my associates, I'll say this, my associates and my colleagues, they might have entire lives that I don't know about. But something tells me if they were running an international ring, I got to be careful with my words on YouTube. If they were running an international ring, an illicit international ring, that would at some point get mentioned, especially if my husband or ex-husband was part of it. I feel like at some point I would know something about it. And then if they were convicted for the very same thing, I would absolutely know about it. And I certainly wouldn't be taking my daughters to see them or bringing up my daughters in conversation, because we wouldn't be in conversation, because I wouldn't be going to see them at all, let alone implicating my children in that. So Sarah Ferguson, Andrew, Edward, and then of course, William by association, all of them being in those emails never sat right with me. But I'm just kind of holding my breath about what's going to come out next. So I have two segments. The first segment has several topics because they're all on the same topic, but they're segmented out within one segment so that y'all weren't having to stop and go. But we're going to continue the discussion. The first segment is basically more information that has come out about Andrew. My goodness. This man was, let me not spoil it, but this man was advocating for Epstein to different people, to other world leaders. And he was doing so in order to recruit them into Epstein's circle, and was specifically using language that Epstein told him to use, almost like a script. And when I was learning about that, like he was recruiting people into this ring, that kind of changes it. It's already bad. His level of involvement was already atrocious. But to know that he was also recruiting other people to be friends with Epstein is also kind of like, that adds a layer to it for me. We're going to get into the details of that. But in the meantime, if you haven't already, please go ahead and like the live stream. And if you haven't, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to stay consistent with the live streams. My schedule is getting a little bit more firm, so I've been able to keep up with that obligation and that commitment. And it's been fun. I love doing live. I prefer live streams over live premieres or just pre-recorded. I prefer to interact. And I appreciate that y'all met me here on a Friday, because y'all could be doing anything else. But please don't forget to subscribe and like. And if you feel so inclined, don't forget to share so that more people can join us while we're live and keep the conversation going. So we're going to go ahead and get segment 1 started. Light up the live chat with your thoughts. And I'm going to be responding to everyone if I can when we get back from the segment. Thanks for watching. Today, I'll be pulling information from the Financial Times in an article written by Robert Wright titled, "Former Prince Advocated for Epstein During Queen Elizabeth's Visit to UAE." Andrew Mountbatten Windsor advocated for Jeffrey Epstein on an official UK state visit to the United Arab Emirates with the late Queen in 2010, according to newly released emails. The former prince wrote to Epstein on November 24th of that year about a meeting with Abdullah, a reference to Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, foreign minister of the UAE. Mountbatten Windsor, then the Duke of York, wrote, quote, "You are in big time. He thinks you are great and would like to introduce you to Sheikh Mohammed, the Crown Prince." On the date in question, Mountbatten Windsor was on a state visit to UAE with his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II, his father, Prince Philip, and William Hague, then UK Foreign Secretary. Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan was the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi at the time, and in 2022 became the Emirates' ruler and president of the UAE. There is no suggestion of wrongdoing by Sheikh Mohammed or Sheikh Abdullah. The emails are the latest revelations that show how Mountbatten Windsor's relationship with Epstein blurred into his official roles as a working royal and special representative for UK trade and investment. Mountbatten Windsor, younger brother of King Charles III, held the trade representative role from 2001 until 2011 and was a working royal until giving up public duties following controversy over his relationship with Epstein in 2019. Epstein was convicted of soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008. The financier completed a period of house arrest for the offense in July of 2010, only months before some of the discussions in the emails. Files released by the U.S. Department of Justice from its investigation into Epstein have included large volumes of information relating to Mountbatten Windsor. The files indicate that Epstein had himself met Sheikh Abdullah shortly before the state visit involving the Queen, and that he gave Mountbatten Windsor arguments to make to encourage the foreign minister to work with him. He was kind of treating Andrew like a lackey. These were that the Sheikh could trust Epstein, that he had financial expertise, and that he was a funder of extreme science. The fourth argument was the single word fun. That just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Yikes. Epstein replied to Mountbatten Windsor's account of the meeting with the foreign minister by suggesting, that the three of them go on holiday together. Quote, "Ask Abdullah for a date when we can all go on vacation," he wrote. There is no indication such a holiday ever took place, although an email from December 3rd, 2010 showed that Epstein's assistant was seeking to set up a three-way phone call between the men. The files also showed that Epstein visited the UAE in August of 2011 with several emails referring to a planned meeting between him and the foreign minister that was canceled at the last minute. I would love to know more about that. Epstein was found dead in a New York jail cell while awaiting trial on charges of sex trafficking in 2019. There was no immediate formal response to a request for comment from the UAE's foreign ministry. Mountbatten Windsor's representatives and Buckingham Palace did not immediately respond to Financial Times' request for comment. One of the main parts of this correspondence that caught my attention is how Epstein and Andrew, with Andrew's help, worked together to coordinate these meetups with very powerful people. In my opinion, I think this shows that Andrew was not just a participant, but in some ways, he was part of the operation. He was part of the planning. He was part of the sourcing. He was part of selling Epstein and all that came with him on behalf of Epstein. It seems like Epstein was deploying Andrew to recruit other world leaders, and that's why having Andrew in his pocket was so valuable. Yesterday, in my video, I asked the question, what did Sarah Ferguson give Epstein in return for him to do so many generous things for her, like send her money, take care of some of her bills, and let her stay in one of his residences? And she was so thankful and grateful, and she was so... I'm trying to find a kind word, but she was obsessive. She was like anxiously obsessive over him. At one point, even saying, "Marry me." And she was just always talking about how generous he was and how thankful she was. And I asked myself and I asked the audience, what is it that she offers him to do these things? He doesn't give me the energy of a generous person. There are some really bad people, but they have soft spots for certain causes, or they are generous for certain things. And well, Epstein doesn't strike me as that type of person at all. The more I learn about him, the more I realize that all of his money, even his donations, had an angle. He absolutely was about the end game. The end goal was constantly front of mind for him. So if he was doing something for someone, or making a connection, or spending his money, or building a rapport, there was a goal in mind. And the fact that he had yet to even meet either Sheikh Mohammed or Sheikh Abdullah, and he started with sell them on the fun, and Andrew did it. How deep was Andrew into all of this? Again, I'm fully aware that he was a full participant. I am fully aware of that. And I am fully aware of the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell had a relationship with Andrew, and she wanted to make sure she showed him a good time so that Epstein would have a royal family member or a member of the royal family in his pocket. And they worked together to get Andrew involved. But now we're kind of seeing a different angle, a little bit more clarity, where Andrew is actually part of the recruitment of other world leaders and other very elite people into this. Now, it's great to hear that neither Sheikh Mohammed or Sheikh Abdullah were able to make any of these meetings or go on this vacation. But man, what other instances are there of this happening and taking place? How many other people did Andrew recruit into this? And he used the Queen's state visit to do so. That is very telling. And the article states that he advocated for Epstein to the Queen, but what actually occurred was he advocated for Epstein to Sheikh Abdullah and Sheikh Mohammed during the Queen's state visit. But that also makes me think there's a lot more that has yet to come out, of course, but that also makes me wonder, how is it that Epstein ended up at one of the Queen's royal residences where they have a photo in the exact same spot at different times? So clearly some advocacy was going on from Andrew to the royal family, or at least to Queen Elizabeth or Prince Philip, because he was able to get Epstein into this residence to stay there with Ghislaine Maxwell. And it looks like they were there on holiday. I'm very curious about that. You guys, let me know, what are your thoughts on this whole matter? If things weren't already terrible for King Charles, he is now also receiving backlash for moving Andrew Mountbatten Windsor into one of his private estates. Today, I'll be pulling this information from the Associated Press in an article written by Danica Kirka. It says the former Prince Andrew has moved out of his longtime home on Crown-owned land near Windsor Castle earlier than expected after the latest release of documents from the U.S. investigation of Jeffrey Epstein revived questions about his friendship with the convicted sex offender. The 65-year-old brother of King Charles III, now known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, left Royal Lodge in Windsor on Monday and is now living on the King's Sandringham estate in eastern England, Britain's Press Association reported. That was already supposed to happen. I guess it just happened earlier than expected. Either way, the backlash was immediate. British media reported that Mountbatten Windsor will live temporarily at Wood Farm Cottage while his permanent home on the estate undergoes repairs. Oh, so they're just fixing it up for him. What a punishment. Mountbatten Windsor's move to Sandringham was announced in October when Charles stripped him of his royal titles amid continuing revelations about his links to Epstein. But the former prince was expected to remain at Royal Lodge, where he has lived for more than 20 years, until the spring. The expedited departure came as Thames Valley Police, I'm so sorry if I'm not saying that correctly, announced they were investigating allegations that Epstein flew a second woman to Britain to have sex with Mountbatten Windsor. I want to be very clear. It's not he flew her to have sex with. They flew her there to traffic her. That was not consensual. A lawyer for the alleged victim told the BBC that the encounter took place in 2010 at Royal Lodge. There was a lot going on in 2010. Like I said, in 2010, it's also when he was advocating for Epstein to meet Sheikh Abdullah and Sheikh Mohammed. The allegations are separate from those made by Virginia Giuffre, who claimed she had been trafficked to Britain to have sex with Andrew in 2001 when she was just 17. Mountbatten Windsor has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing in his relationship with Epstein. He hasn't responded publicly to the new trafficking allegations. Mountbatten Windsor features a number of times in the 3 million pages of documents the U.S. Department of Justice released on Friday. In an email dated March 23, 2011, the lawyer for an exotic dancer said Epstein and Mountbatten Windsor asked her to take part in a threesome at the sex offender's Florida home. My goodness, it just keeps getting worse. There's just more stuff coming out every day. The woman's legal representatives accused the pair of having prevailed upon her to engage in various acts during the alleged encounter in early 2006 after initially hiring her to dance for them. The woman was only paid $2,000, not the $10,000 she was promised. The lawyer offered to settle the matter confidentially for $250,000. Quote, my client has not pursued her claims against your client until this time because she is not proud of the circumstances of that night. Oh, she was working as an exotic dancer, but she was treated like a prostitute. I want to be fair. All sex work it's still work, whether you agree with it morally or not, whether you yourself would do it or not, whether you would advocate for these people to be able to do this legally, illegal, whatever, regardless of your personal stance. Humans deserve to be treated like humans. So whether this person was a dancer or whether or not she was a prostitute, regardless of her employment status or her title, she is a human being and deserves to be treated with respect. She does not deserve to be forced to do anything, and any agreements made should have been made and upheld by both sides. I don't necessarily care for the way they're saying she was an exotic dancer, but she was treated like a prostitute, as if she were a prostitute, she should be treated poorly as well. A human is a human. And I learned from the time I was born, not to look down on people. You never know what circumstances have brought a person to where they are. And we would all love to be able to look at any type of employment and say, I would never do that. But you never really know what you do when the stakes are high enough. You can certainly say that I would never be this type of person, or I would never commit that kind of crime. Those are things you can say. But as far as employment, desperate times call for desperate measures, or some people just want to do that. Regardless of where that person stands on an individually moral basis, that's not for us to judge. And it's certainly not for us to say, because you do this type of work, you deserve to be treated a certain way. That is not okay. And I really don't like the dehumanization in that statement from the victim or her lawyer. In other correspondence between Epstein and someone believed to be Mountbatten Windsor, it shows Epstein offering to arrange a date between the man and a 26-year-old Russian woman. The man, who signs off simply as A, later suggests that he and Epstein have dinner in London, either at a restaurant or Buckingham Palace. I wonder who A could be. The documents do not show wrongdoing of many of those named. The appearance of famous people in the files often reflect Epstein's extremely wide reach. The former prince's residence at Royal Lodge has long been a point of contention between the king and his brother. After Charles became king in 2022, he tried to force his brother to move into a smaller house on the Windsor Castle estate. Mountbatten Windsor refused, citing a lease on the property that ran through 2078. He's got a lot of nerve. All of them do, but Andrew has a lot of nerve. But the pressure for him to leave became irresistible in October as lawmakers and the public raised questions about the favorable terms of Mountbatten Windsor's lease on the 30-room house and surrounding estate, which is managed by the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate controls properties throughout the country that are technically owned by the monarchy but are managed for the benefit of British taxpayers. By contrast, the Sandringham estate in Norfolk is the personal property of the king. So he's just being moved around to get repairs on his permanent estate. And at the end of the day, these are still multi-million-dollar lavish properties. This is not justice, and this is not punishment. Can you imagine doing something heinous and someone saying, okay, so we're going to pull you out of your 30-room mansion and we're going to put you in a 10-room mansion? I know. It sucks. And yes, you'll probably have one less chef and 10 less staff members. And I get it. You might even have to walk to the end of the driveway to get your own mail once or twice. I apologize, but it's what we got to do to keep the public at bay. That is not good enough. I low-key want to storm the estate and drag his ass out of it and let's jump him in the street. Not advocating for violence. I'm just joking here. But I'm saying I can't imagine thinking that this is justice or in any way comparable to what he deserves for what he has done. Anyway, y'all let me know what you think. As far as the backlash, Charles is now being heckled on engagements. He can probably just expect this to happen moving forward. Unless he plans on turning his brother over to authorities and making him actually experience consequences, he's going to get heckled. Y'all let me know your thoughts on this. And let's get over to the story about Charles being heckled. So not only was Charles heckled, but Camilla was heckled as well at a separate engagement. Y'all, the public is not playing with the royals. They want answers. They want justice. They want accountability. They want transparency. And I cannot blame them. The royals, the ones who are still over there enabling that nonsense, they better prepare for this to happen everywhere they go. This is only going to get worse. So according to People magazine, King Charles and Camilla, Queen Consort, were greeting well-wishers in Dedham, Essex, when a man yelled, "Charles, Charles, should the police be investigating Andrew?" Others in the crowd were appalled. Some people tried to hush him. Some people tried to shout over him. But the king didn't react, and it's unclear if he heard the heckler. Now, here's what I'll say. Charles is one of the best at ignoring some BS. Do I think people should be heckling him? Yeah. But does he probably think it's frivolous and annoying? Also, yeah. I've seen Charles not react to gunshots. He was walking up to a podium and someone was shooting. It's not clear if they were shooting at him. I think they were, but he didn't even react. I think he's just a sitting duck. He's been in privilege for so long and he's probably been taught he's invincible. He just doesn't react. He has no survival skills. Remember I told y'all that story that Diana shared in her book, Diana, Her True Story by Andrew Morton? When she said that his butler had pulled out the wrong outfit for him while they were on vacation, or no, they were on, I'm not sure if they were on holiday or what, but they were out of the country. And the butler pulled out the wrong outfit and then went downstairs to grab the car. And so when Charles came in, he saw the outfit that was pulled for him. And he was like, no, this isn't the right day for this outfit. I want the other outfit. And so he started calling his butler. And Diana said she was standing there like, are you insane? Just go get the other outfit out of the closet right there. And Charles refused. He would not go get the clothes. And it was like 10 feet away. He waited for the butler to pull his car around, then made him come back upstairs, put that outfit away, and get out the outfit that he wanted. That is insane. So he doesn't have any survival skills. So that might also be part of it. He's also up in age. He might just be hard of hearing. You don't know. It's probably really loud, but I will say, to his quote unquote credit, I guess, he's one of the best I've ever seen at avoiding things that he doesn't want to talk about. I remember when the media was reporting on the royal rift at its peak, it was loud and most of it was wrong and it was dramatic and there was so much going on. And someone said, Charles, do you love Prince Harry? And then at another engagement, someone said, Charles, what do you have to say about Harry's recent comments? And I can't remember what the comments were at the time. In both instances, and I believe they were the same week, Charles didn't say anything. He just smiled and kept walking. And while I agree with hecklers, I also understand Charles's response, because who are you to ask me about any damn thing that's going on in my family? I wouldn't answer questions either. Now, again, I'm saying that as someone who is not a public figure. I'm not a royal family member, and I have not been led to believe that the public is owed my life and that I am supposed to portray transparency and I'm supposed to make them feel like they are part of my family. So I'm not supposed to make them feel like I'm breaking the bond, but I should have a light boundary. I've not been taught that. I'm a private citizen. So when people have walked up to me because they've spoken to other members of my family, and some of the members of my family, not everybody, but some members of my family, they lead with all the things they hate about other family members. And it's never made sense to me, but it's how they build connections. They heavily practice common enemy bonding. So when they meet people, when they want to hang out with people, when they want to spend time with people, the way they go about it is they tell them other family members' business and they shit talk other family members. And that's how they bond with people, outsiders. That sounds insane to me. I would never do something like that, but I have witnessed it. But because some of the members of my family lead with that, those same people, when they see me or when they connect with me or they spend time with me, they think the wall is down and they'll try to bring up those topics or talk shit about that same family member. I have always been a boundary person. You're not going to get me to talk about my family. If I open the door to have a conversation, that's one thing, but you're not going to just sit up and talk about my family with me. You sit up and talk about my family in front of me, I'm going to black your eye. And that might not be the worst thing I do to you. Even if I don't like that family member, I'm all for one for all, unless you're a predator. That's a very different thing. But anyway, sometimes people would come up to me and be like, girl, I heard this about your uncle, or girl, I heard this about your brother, girl, I heard this about your sister. And I have varying responses that I give those people that basically tell them they can go to hell. And sometimes I get creative. Sometimes I'll say something witty and cute and funny, and I'll be just as nasty and catty right back with them, but I will assert that boundary and protect my family. And then sometimes I'll just say, go to hell. Why would you ask me about that? I love a good straight shooting moment. So sometimes I'll give you a variety, but what I have never really been able to do is get quiet. I have a real hard time with that. So Charles, for what it's worth, he's one of the best I've ever seen at avoiding those moments where someone comes up to him and says something completely out of line, even when they are on the right side of the issue. But heckling, and I fully agree with this because I'm not a public figure. So yes, heckle Charles, he's a public figure. But heckling seems like it would be very overwhelming. He just handles it in stride. He's just like, oh, okay. I saw this man dodge an egg. So anyway, it's funny to me because I'm not the one dodging questions and dodging eggs, but if they want this to stop, they're going to have to offer some transparency, and they're going to have to make a decision that makes their stance on these issues definitive. That statement talking about we stand with victims means nothing when you're housing a predator and his wife. Like, what do you mean I stand with victims? Like, at the end of the day, if I put out a statement and said, I stand with fire ants, I believe in fire ants, I'm a woman of the people and I support fire ants, vote for me. And then the moment I see a fire ant, I'm like, ah! And I spray it down with whatever ant spray I have. Like, I can't be both. Either I can be pro or I can be anti, but I cannot be both. If you are pro-victim, then you are anti-predator, do what's necessary. But if you are protecting a predator, in my opinion, then you are anti-victim. you're on the wrong side of the issue. That's just how I see it. I'm very black and white when it comes to things like that. For me, abuse, molestation, trafficking, those things are not nuanced issues when it comes to right and wrong. I don't need the complexities of what led you here to determine if you're wrong. Now, how you are handled, that's between you and the court system. But should you be handled by the courts? Yes, you should absolutely have to serve some kind of time and justice should be served. Let me not go on a tangent. Justice should be served. I don't really care that, oh, my mommy never picked me up and hugged me, and oh, my daddy never saw me for who I was, and oh, I never had $1 million on hand like my brother. I don't give a damn what led you down the path. If your path led you to harm innocent and vulnerable people, I don't give a damn what happened prior to that until justice is served. Now, once you have been committed to some kind of asylum, or you have been committed to the prison system, or you have been axed, once justice has been served, I'm fine with you talking to a therapist, and I'm fine with you getting the help that you need. But you need to get the help that you need behind bars, not Sandringham. You need to get the help that you need once justice is being served. That's when I care about what your needs are. And honestly, I don't care about what your needs are. I just think if you need to talk to somebody, that needs to happen, but that needs to happen after justice is served, because the victim's needs and the victim's feelings and their experience comes first for me. So no, Charles, if you want this heckling to stop, you're going to have to do something about it. Do I think he will? No, I'm not delusional. Should he? Yes. And I will continue to reiterate that. Not only will I continue to reiterate that, but Camilla is also catching herself being heckled. Now listen, I don't mind this. While I would be uncomfortable if I were being heckled or asked about personal things, I'm all for it when it comes to public figures, and I'm also not housing a predator. So there's a couple things that I'm doing to avoid being heckled and harmed. That's just me. But Camilla is also being heckled, according to People magazine, in an article written by Stephanie Pettit. Both of these articles are in the description box below. She was faced with questions about the royal family's reaction to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation when she arrived at London's Christ Church Primary School for a planned engagement to help mark the National Year of Reading. And this was, I believe, 2 days ago. A reporter asked the royal questions as she was exiting her car. Now, there's a video going around about this, but allegedly this person said, or apparently this person said, "Good morning, Your Majesty, good morning. Will the royal family help the Epstein investigation? Do you have a message for Epstein's victims, Your Majesty?" I love how she started so polite. "Good morning, Your Majesty, good morning." Okay, so what about this Epstein investigation? What y'all gonna do? I love a direct person. Get right to business. So she ignored the questions. She went right inside the school and she started greeting people, etc. But again, I say, if y'all want this to stop, a decision must be made. I find it to be so interesting, though, the backlash that has come out about Epstein, or not Epstein, about Andrew, and how Charles has failed to handle that, in my opinion. The way he is handling it is not enough for me. Prince William being an ambassador of a charity, Wild Aid, that accepted funding from Epstein well after his conviction for being a sex offender. And then, of course, Prince Edward was named in a complaint, not in any kind of legal capacity, but in the Epstein files, a complaint was filed that a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old girl said Prince Edward was on Little St. James Island. She saw him and she detailed what she was wearing, what he was wearing, and he was there while trafficking was happening. So now that 3 other royals, because Sarah Ferguson's emails are just all over the place. She was emailing Epstein like it was the morning paper. My God, she would wake up, sip her coffee, and say, "Let me see what he up to." Like, she was low-key kind of obsessed. It was a little scary. It was weird. Just reading those emails already irritated me because of the stuff she said about Eugenie. But then more to that, the way she was talking to him, it just felt like more is going to come out between their little relationship. I don't get that dynamic at all. But the more time that passes, the more information that comes out, the more royals seem to be implicated in Epstein's mess. They're going to have to do something, and they're going to have to make their stance very firm if they want this kind of stuff to stop. I don't know if they care enough, but this isn't like your typical scandal. This is not just going to blow over. It's only going to continue to accelerate. But y'all, keep up the heckling. Put the pressure on them. Something should be done. In the meantime, y'all let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.
Good morning, Your Majesty. Good morning. Will the royal family help the Epstein investigation? Do you have a message for Epstein's victims, Your Majesty?
So that was a lot. So I apologize for the rambling, but this is such a uncomfortable topic. I'm all discombobulated. It's such an uncomfortable topic, but it is important that the conversation continues because too many people have clearly gotten over and under without getting any justice, and it's completely unfair. Now, I have been talking about this for quite some time, not just because of Andrew's involvement, but on the member side, we read Virginia Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, and she revealed quite a bit. She also detailed every single time she interacted with Andrew, and she gave a lot of details, including the puppets. She talked about a lot. She gave a lot of details, but she also gave a lot of information about how Epstein behaves and how he thinks. Even with all that information and even with all of the files that have come out, I still don't this is a good thing. I still don't really understand him as a person. I don't understand anything outside of that man. Just seemed like a demon. He just seemed like a demon, and anybody who palled around with him seemed like a demon as well. And that's the best I can do. And I think demon is a polite word because I'm on YouTube. I can't use the word I would really like to use, or the words I would really like to use. But some of the stuff that's coming out, I've had to pace how much information I'm allowing myself to read and ingest because it is just that bad. It is a lot, and it's extremely overwhelming. Even with reading Nobody's Girl, I had to pause a couple of times. Those recaps started to slow down near the end because part 2 was the hardest one, but then part 4 offered her own internal struggle, and the details while gripping were difficult. But she gave an amazing account of what happened. She gave so many details, and she has an impeccable memory. And I appreciated her informing the world in that way. But anyway, all of them need to be in jail. All of them. Not to mention, knowing that the royals, or at least King Charles, had access to these files at least a year ago, at least. But it is likely he had them much sooner. The fact that not only was he slow to act, but the actions that he took, the actions that his mother took, they just weren't sufficient. And knowing what we know now, or even I'll say knowing the little bit that we know now, because it is highly likely that it's a lot worse than what we know. But knowing the little bit that we know now, for them to not have simply said, get out, you're exiled, you're banished, or worse, off with his head or something, I just can't. And I get the people arguing like, oh, well, when you have a child, you understand. Will I feel like most things that can be applied, but I feel like trafficking is where, whether or not I have a child or not, I don't know that it's relevant. If I have a responsibility and a duty, and my child completely, I won't even say messes up is an understatement, abuses his power, his access, his privilege to harm others, and I mean on a grand scale, such as what Andrew Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell did and all the others who were involved, I would have no choice but to take action and give him the maximum punishment. I mean, I feel like everybody's been very lenient on Andrew. I don't feel like he's truly gotten the full gamut of what he really deserves, all of them. And I'm just going to be very honest. Again, these are my opinions, and this is just a discussion, but I'm just going to be honest. I have never once felt like Epstein was not alive anymore. I've always felt like that type of person, while I could be wrong, that type of person just doesn't give me the vibe of someone who's going to leave willingly. I feel like he just had so many people in his network that he was using these videos, this footage, this information to blackmail, and he'd evaded true consequences for so long. I just didn't see him giving up that quickly and just being like, oh, I'm not going to try to work my network a little bit more. I just don't see it. I could be wrong, but I just don't see it. And I also have a hard time believing that someone with enough access and money and resources to have their own islands, it's easy as hell to hide when you're in a place like New York City or Los Angeles or hell, even Texas. But on your own island, nobody's going to find you, especially finding out they have like 3 layers of underground tunnels, dwellings. Get out of here. That man probably grew his hair out, dyed it, and is living somewhere else. Who knows? But anyway, let me get to some of these comments. I appreciate y'all lighting up the comment section like this. Let's get to some of the comments. Thank you so much. Is it Eltina? Thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate that. Thank you and welcome. Hi, Mina Ruth. Mina Ruth says, in the biography of Malcolm X, quote, or in the words of Malcolm X, quote, the chickens are coming home to roost. Everybody who had dealings or was a part of the trafficking is getting their karma. Absolutely. I don't know that I knew about Epstein. I didn't know how big it was. I always assumed, but even my assumptions were not this big, this grand, or this bad. I'm happy that I wasn't able to imagine some of the realities that have been revealed in the Epstein files and emails, some of the things those people were doing. And then some of the videos of these models from like 10 years ago coming out screaming and crying and confessing things that they'd seen, and then they just go missing. Like, it's enough to make your head spin. Anybody who was even part of that or in proximity to it, who was not a victim, of course, anybody who was even around that, I don't see how they can just go on living a normal life as if they weren't doing those things. Like, I accidentally nearly ran over a squirrel once. I literally swerved just in time, but I wasn't sure which way he was going to go. And he went the opposite way that I decided to go, and I was relieved. But when I tell you, I felt bad about that all day, about almost hitting a squirrel, an innocent being. And I bring this up because I thought about that all day, and I clearly remember it now. And this was 20 years ago when I first got my license. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because something like that stuck with me. I felt bad all day about that. I cannot imagine intentionally harming anyone or anything, but especially children and babies. I don't see how they live with themselves. And that's why I say those people are not human in the way that you and I are human. I feel like something is missing. A key component to humanity is missing in them, and it makes them extremely dangerous, as they've proven they are. And that's why I feel like the only real resolution to something like that, YouTube probably won't let me say that. But you get where I'm going with this. Anyway, let's continue. Hi, Wine Lady. Wine Lady says, number 37, first time here, loving it already. Thank you so much for liking the live stream, and thank you so much for being here. Welcome. Hopefully you come back. I hope you feel right at home. Welcome, welcome. We love to have you. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Novi D. Novi D says, what a tangled web. You know what? And that we haven't even gotten to the meat and potatoes of it. There's still so much that hasn't come out yet. And even what has come out, people haven't had a chance to truly sort through it. I was recommended to go search the files. Like, you can search for certain names. And when I was pulling up different royals' names and I was trying to find anything that was said about Andrew to see if there's anything we missed, there was so much information that I said, you know what? Something tells me that people will tag me in the things that they want me to talk about. So I'm just going to leave it there because I couldn't even take sorting through those emails. It was just so much, so much. Hi, Mina Ruth. Mina Ruth says, Randy Andy's staff went on strike. Did you hear about that, Sharion? No. I'm surprised. Let me see. Hold on, y'all. Let me see. Randy Andy's... Not me calling him Randy Andrew's staff went on strike. Let's see if Marie Claire will let me share this, because I want to see. I do have the article now that you. Thank you for bringing that up. I do have the article right here. Let's see if I can share this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's get this information. I never really read stuff on the spot, y'all. So let's see. This is in Marie Claire, written by Kristen Contino. She's one of the regulars that I read from. And the title is Royal Source Says There's Quite a List of Staff Who Said No Thanks to Serving Pariah Andrew at Sandringham. It is possible. It's possible for the first time in his life, he will have to open the front door to people himself. Please tell me that is an exaggeration. That man hasn't opened the door to people by himself. Look at him looking like the pariah that he is. Ugh. Have you ever seen somebody or heard of somebody accused of something and you can look at them and see it all over him? He looks like what he's accused of. Like, I'm looking at him and I'm like, yeah, I can see him doing everything he's been accused of. He just got the look. There's so many pictures of him doing things like, and he's just got this abnormal way about him. Weird man. As Andrew Mountbatten Windsor settles into his temporary Norfolk home, Wood Farm, a new report suggests the disgraced ex-Duke could have a tough time finding staff at Sandringham. The former Duke of York moved out of Royal Lodge on Monday, February 2nd, and on February 5th, the Sun reported that some of the employees on the King's private estate are on strike. Okay, before I even continue, I do not blame them. Working with and for someone, especially in a private estate, in a personal dwelling, that is a very different thing than working in a corporate office. But even then, when someone has this much power and access to resources and money, and he's the king's brother, and you're already seeing that he's not having to deal with consequences for harming someone, I sure as hell would not be working at his house. Basically, the staff are sitting ducks. I feel like by not making him face consequences for what he has clearly been accused of, and there's a lot of evidence supporting the accusation, I feel like by not giving him consequences, they're basically sending the staff for him to feed on. That's how I see it. Have y'all ever seen the Invitation? There's like several, but there's the Invitation with Natalie Emmanuel. And in the movie, she's invited to this big castle or whatever to meet family that she never knew she had, etc. And turns out, if you haven't seen the movie, mute me. 3, 2, 1. They're vampires. And what the vampires do is they eat the staff. Not all of them, just some of them. They'll eat the staff. And nothing can be done about it. And then it turns out the whole town knew what was happening. And essentially they were offering them people so that the vampires didn't come into the town and eat everybody else. And sending staff to work for an abusive boss when he's already been accused on a massive global scale of abusing people and no consequences have been rendered from it. Sending anybody into that man's home is basically telling him it's okay to do this because we're not going to stop you. I also would quit. I would also never show up. I would also strike. They have every reason to keep themselves safe. This is not even we can't stand him because he's a piece of shit, although that is also fair. This is more of am I safe here? And the answer is no. This is a predator. Why would you send prey into a predator's dwelling with no restrictions? And apparently this estate is way more private than Royal Lodge, with way less access from what I read earlier. So this is when I say they're all complicit. Maybe you don't have a direct hand in something, but indirectly, they're all part of the problem if he doesn't face consequences. He shouldn't have staff anyway. He should be in jail. If we're just going to be real, he should have jail staff. That's the stuff he needs to be working with, is the COs. He should not be at Sandringham. He should not be at Wood Farm. He should not be anywhere where he has access to other human beings without any kind of restriction or protection for those people. This is how you handle a predator. Would you set free a damn hungry lion in Wood Farm Estate and then send in a whole bunch of people with no protections to serve the lion? No bars, no gates, no COs, no guns. You would just let them roam around with this hungry lion just waiting for their turn to be eaten up because you're not going to stop the lion? No, you wouldn't. This is a predator. Treat him like the predator that he is. Stop sending people up there to help him. Send those good people somewhere else to work for people who aren't going to cause harm to them. Anyway, quote, they've been told they don't have to serve Andrew or work for him if they feel uncomfortable. Well, that's good. There is already quite a list saying no thanks. I don't blame them. Thank you, Mina Ruth, for bringing this up. The insider continued that there is understandably a lot of disquiet among the staffers since Andrew is not or is now a total pariah. I don't even know. Sure, he's a pariah, blah, 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 but he's just not safe to be around. He's just not a safe person to be around. That's dangerous. Prince Philip spent his final years living at Wood Farm, a cozy farmhouse situated in a quiet area of the estate, about a 5-minute drive from Sandringham House. The property was not originally offered as an option for Andrew, but the former Duke has temporarily moved in until the renovations on his eventual home, Marsh Farm, are complete. However, the Sun source says that, say that 5 times fast, that there's concern they will never get him out again now that Andrew is set up at Wood Farm. He sounds like a virus. They'll never get him out. My God, is he tar? Jeez, Marsh Farm is a much smaller property with fewer amenities, which is said to have been a source of contention for the former Duke. Imagine harming people. And y'all know I'm restricted on what words I can use, but imagine harming people, R-wording people, when your ass should be in a jail cell. You should be under the jail. I was about to say something. You should be 6 feet deep, or they burying them 9 now. That you should be 9 feet deep. You don't need to be up dwelling with the rest of the people in the land of the living. You need to be 9 feet or 6 feet, wherever you are, whatever they do, deep. You better be glad you're anywhere above ground, because you certainly shouldn't be. As for his staff, the insider says people who have been with him for years are off, adding that the ex-Duke's employees didn't want to move to the middle of nowhere. They may say that, and that's a fair assessment, but I think it's just they don't want to be in the middle of nowhere with a predator. I don't want to be running around in the middle of nowhere with Jason Voorhees hot on my tail. I don't want to be in the middle of nowhere with Freddy Krueger right behind me. You have to treat certain predatory people like the predators that they are. Don't nobody want to be out here without access to help in a remote area with a harmful person, a person who has already shown they're happy to harm, and with a family who's going to protect him in his wrongdoing and do nothing about it. All of them are complicit. It will likely be they have a typo, 2 eyes. It will likely be a skeleton staff at best. It's possible for the first time in his life, he will have to open the front door to people himself. He shouldn't have a staff to begin with, because he shouldn't have a house to begin with, because he should be in jail. That's my stance. Y'all let me know what you think about it. And Mina Ruth, thank you so much for bringing that up. I had no idea until just now. Clearly, it ran me hot. By the end of the live stream, I will have that listed down below under sources if y'all want to read that article or share that article yourself. But I appreciate you showing that to me. Hi, Shelly Miranda. Shelly Miranda says, Edward needs to be put out of his estate as well. I agree. They need to be investigating why that little girl said she saw him at Little St. James Island. And she gave details about everything that had happened to her. I believe her. I completely agree with you. Hi, Ann McLeod. Ann McLeod says, hi, Sharion. I recall hearing one time that Jeffrey Epstein thought that Andrew was a useful idiot. I guess when you're right, you're right. You can now see why Jeffrey Epstein was manipulative, very manipulative. I saw one email where he had invited somebody to come and they declined because they were going to be busy. And his tone shifted into this very intimidating attempt. I don't know if it was intimidating to her, but he was like, I thought you understood what was going on here. He's manipulative, and he's got this sadistic quality to him. All of his correspondence, it just feels like at any point it'll crack open and bleed. I don't know if that makes sense, but just something about it feels serpentine. Just there's something off about his correspondence. Even his emails, it just feels like there's a nasty veneer over it. Hi, Gwendolyn Daniel. Gwendolyn Daniel says, I don't understand how that demon got his hands on so many young kids. So in a lot of ways, I personally feel like, obviously, kidnapping. We also heard a little bit about their strategy from Virginia Giuffre with Ghislaine Maxwell. It's very easy to attract children and other young girls when you have a woman as the face of your operation, because inherently people trust women more than men. And I kind of talked about how duplicitous Ghislaine Maxwell really was. She was also British and she lived in America. So there was already this, she seems to be upper crust here, her accent, the way she carried herself, she had money, she was in Palm Beach. So West Palm Beach. So people already assumed that she was well-to-do, and they kind of put her above a certain standard. And so there was kind of this inherent trust because of her wealth. This is another form of privilege. And not only that, but she was a woman. and she was a member of Mar-a-Lago. And so she was basically meeting these young girls who came to work for Mar-a-Lago and their friends. And then, of course, the way the whole operation got outed was because they were recruiting from local high schools from people, young girls who came from underprivileged families, and they were recruiting them using money, much like they did Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre's situation, the way they got her into that was the way she told the story in the book was Ghislaine Maxwell offered to teach her, to get her trained to become a masseuse, because she was working at Mar-a-Lago as a locker room attendant. She wanted to be a masseuse to make more money, and she wanted to learn the skill. So she said, hey, you can be a private masseuse for Epstein, for my business partner. Come interview at his house later. So she asked her dad, who also worked as a groundskeeper at Mar-a-Lago for many, many years. And as a matter of fact, when she got hired, the first order of business was for him to go have Trump meet her. And she said he showed her off like a trophy. But he drove her to Epstein's home and dropped her off. And Ghislaine came out to the parking lot or to the driveway and met them, said hello, and that they would get her sent back through a driver. And they took her in the house at night. I don't know too many parents who are going to take their kids to somebody's mansion and drop them off at night and leave them. There's already that. So that already was interesting. But the whole exchange sounded like a transaction to me. And the way Virginia Giuffre describes it, as it was just all these moving parts. And then later she found out her dad accepted a large sum of money from Epstein. I personally don't think it was hush money, as it was referred to in court. I think that was a transaction. I think he knowingly sold her into business. She said afterwards, that was the first night, the interview was the first night she was harmed by Epstein and Ghislaine. When their driver took her home, they gave her money. When the driver took her home, her parents asked her about the interview, but she was uncomfortable, embarrassed, obviously, because that's a lot of times victims are shamed, and they're taught and conditioned to harbor inherent shame, and it makes it harder for them to speak up because they'll be blamed, or some way, shape, or form, they'll be the problem. And a lot of times people do that, one, because they have their own inherent issues, but then two, they don't want to have to hold rich, powerful, privileged people to account because they don't have the resources. So they misdirect their reaction. There's a lot of moving parts to that. But anyway, she didn't tell her parents what happened. And she questioned why they didn't question why she got home so late, or why she looked the way she did. She didn't look well kempt. It didn't look like she'd been in an interview. And when I read that part, I said, oh, it's because they knew. Then later in the book, it's revealed that her dad had accepted money. Also, just a little bit off topic, you cannot convince me that her father did not know what Jeffrey Epstein did, because he and Ghislaine recruited from Mar-a-Lago often, and her dad worked there as a groundskeeper for a long time. People talk. When you work anywhere for a certain amount of time, you know all the lore about all the returning customers. You just do, especially something that big. And even if he didn't, which that's a stretch, even if he didn't, wouldn't you want to inquire before taking your daughter? That's why I'm convinced her dad knew exactly what was going on, and he made that choice knowingly. But anyway, so that's one way. And then, of course, we found out that some of the people who were a participant in the trafficking ring also offered their children as well. And that's just a harsh reality. Those people, if you can harm any child, I'm concerned about you around any child, around every child, excuse me. So like, your kids are not exempt from your harm. If you're willing to hurt kids, your kids would not be exempt from that, in my opinion. In the same way with Virginia Giuffre, her dad was her first abuser. And her mom knew about it and covered it up for her. And then her family found out and did nothing about it. She told her family at a whole family reunion. She told everybody, and no one did anything about it. So a lot of times it's systemic, but their entire networks are typically in on it in some capacity, whether or not they're directly doing it, or they're enabling it, or just staying quiet, turning the other way. That's just how those things work. It's really sad. Hi, Gwendolyn Daniel. Gwendolyn Daniel says, I really don't believe that Demon committed self-harm. I agree. I don't either. I'm so sorry. Is it SKT? It says, Fergie and Andrew's ruin is what happens when the Spares are completely dependent on a fickle monarch and have nothing the honor, talent, nor courage to break free. Thank God H&M have all that and got out. Completely true, but then also on top of that, a whole nother layer, they are inherently abusers. That is what they do. They have no values and they are abusive people and they are okay with abuse. I completely agree. The way Sarah was obsessively kissing up to Epstein and thanking him repeatedly for all of the money and the help and the aid that he had helped her with. I'm like, see, this is why you never let anybody put you in you never let anyone take power position over you. You will be essentially their lackey for the rest of your life. You'll be on engagements with your mother, trying to connect them to more people into their incessant trafficking ring. Allegedly, Charles has been attempting to be very intentional about building the relationship back up with Harry and Meghan. Allegedly, he has extended an invite to them to stay at Balmoral whenever they're in the UK. That has not been confirmed. That is a story that has been perpetuated by Rob Shooter on his Substack. Do with that what you will. But amidst all of these reports that Charles is trying to basically court Harry to build a relationship back up with his family, or at least back up with Charles. We know that Charles is allegedly cancer stricken, so maybe this is a kind of a bucket list thing for him, but none of this has been confirmed. In the midst of all of that is Camilla, and reports coming out that she's attempting to stop all of that. And this is one of the very few issues that she, William, and Kate have in common, is they don't want Harry and Meghan back. Surprise, surprise. But then at the same time, Charles is allegedly telling them, you can go to hell, I can do what I want, and I'm going to do this. If that is true, and it has not been confirmed, but if that turns out to be true, that'll be the only time Charles has ever gained an ounce of my respect. Once it's confirmed. Anyway, Globe magazine reports Camilla is chipping away at King Charles to rescind his invitation to Harry and Meghan. This has been written by Doug Montero, and it's linked in the description box below. Y'all, this article is a mess. Camilla is seizing power in the UK as she takes advantage of the cancer-stricken state of the monarch, her husband, King Charles, and no one in Britain's royal household is safe from her reign of terror. Camilla is horrendously controlling of Charles. She often insists that he stay in his room and raises merry hell if he tries to get up and assert his independence. Of course, her official excuse for this is that he needs rest and she's doing it for his own good. But everyone knows it's her way to control him and give herself a platform to assert herself when he's not there. Camilla, who waited decades to marry Charles and wear a crown, took on more responsibilities when her ailing husband had to pare down his busy schedule because of his health. However, sources say the king's former mistress turned queen now refuses to stop throwing her weight around, even as Charles claims his condition has improved. Y'all, usually I am the one sticking in jabs in these articles, and Doug is doing it for me. Quote, she charges around barking orders, tearing into anyone who doesn't fall in line, and generally causing chaos throughout the palace. Her drinking has always been an issue, but lately she's been taking it up a level. Camilla is hitting the bottle hard and is usually 3 sheets to the wind by the evening. Oh, goodness, Camilla. Often she'll be knocking it back during the daytime as well, and that's when she tends to be her most aggressive, overexerting herself and acting like a power-crazed tyrant. Oof, I think y'all need to stage a revolt. As Globe also reported, sources say Charles had brokered a deal previously with his heir, Prince William, allowing his oldest son to effectively banish his younger son, Prince Harry, in exchange for allowing his beloved Camilla to maintain a life of lavish luxury and respect after his death. Now, I just want to be very clear. I don't know anything about that. But what I will say is Prince Harry and Meghan leaving and stepping back from being working royals has been detailed in Spare and in Harry and Meghan, the docuseries on Netflix. For any details on why they left, how they left, and everything surrounding them leaving, go straight to them. Palace watchers say the California-based Prince Harry now appears to be on the verge of a reconciliation with his father after a reconciliatory tea in September. Insiders also believe that when William ascends to the throne, he will have no qualms about casting out his stepmother, whose decades-long affair with Charles contributed to the end of the king's marriage to the prince's late mother, Princess Diana, especially because of how Camilla humiliates his wife and the future queen, Kate. Now, I'll say this. Sure, take up for your wife, but you can't really get mad at somebody else for doing something that you do yourself. William's pretty brutal to her as well. It can't be worth all that, girl. My goodness. Quote, Camilla isn't afraid to put Kate in her place any chance she gets. The way she talks to her can be pretty brutal, looking down her nose and effectively treating her like a second-class commoner or menial servant. Listen, Kate's got to be able to give if she's going to take it. She's going to have to be able to take it if she's going to give it. She tried to be an asshole to Meghan. So whatever she's getting from Camilla, she rightfully earned. But also, Camilla, you don't have a soapbox to stand on near anybody. You cannot look down your nose at anybody. You cannot read anybody. You cannot put anybody out to pasture. You were a whole mistress. Emphasis on, let me hush. You were a whole mistress. A whole whore out here, and you were not doing anybody any justice by playing the role of a mistress, ending a marriage and your own marriage, and then attempting to drive a woman, an innocent woman who did nothing to you, although she should have stomped you out. You tried to drive her mentally insane with your antics. You were practically taking up residence with her husband in a whole house, hosting parties with him. And this lady was right up the way in the palace. You can't look down your nose at anybody. At the very least, Kate can always say she was William's first wife, and she was never a public mistress that we know of, or that I know of. And that's not saying too much because, again, she's still married to William, so that's a forever L she deserves. But you can't look down your nose at anybody. Anyway, let's continue. Sources say Camilla is keeping a close eye on her husband's efforts to lure back Harry and his American wife, Meghan Sussex, who ceased being working royals in 2020 and put down roots in Montecito, California, where they're raising their family. The insider maintains Camilla won't forgive the Duke and Duchess of Sussex for their verbal attacks, this is in quotes, against the royal family, and says she's working hard to ensure the losers are not allowed back to the UK. She told Charles it's a terrible idea, and she's attempting to chip away at him to rescind the invite, an insider says. If they do turn up, she's vowing to make life as difficult and uncomfortable as possible while they're in England. But in an ideal world, she'll just put a stop to it altogether. She emphatically believes Meghan and Harry are treacherous, twisted rats who have no place in the royal household. Now, again, this article is linked in the description box below, and I have, honestly, thoughts. So the Epstein files have been releasing, or the U.S. Department of Justice has been releasing articles or emails, from the Epstein files. Emails, videos, photos, all kinds of stuff. And in addition to all of the involvement of Prince Andrew or Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, we also now have new information about Sarah Ferguson's involvement, including her daughters. We also now have new information about Prince Edward allegedly being present, according to a 13-year-old girl who was present on Little St. James Island when she was being trafficked by Epstein. She named him several times in her complaint. And then, of course, we also have Prince William showing up several times in the Epstein emails because he worked with Wild Aid, a charity that accepted donations from Epstein after his 2008 conviction for being a sex offender. You have 4 members of your family confirmed to have been present or part of the Epstein scandal in some way, shape, or form. Honey, Harry and Meghan should not be your concern. And this just goes to show how idiotic y'all truly are. Are you going out of your way to make sure Andrew and Sarah are uncomfortable? Are you making sure that they feel unwelcome? And I find it to be interesting, Camilla. You are going out of your way to make somebody feel uncomfortable in a home that you have no rights to. You are married into that family. Harry is family by blood. His daddy can't divorce him. He can divorce you. Now, will he? No. But can he? Hell yeah. See, the difference between you and Harry is that is actually Harry's biological family. And while in a perfect world, step parents and stepchildren and have children and all blended families would feel like one family, as they should, a key component of that feeling like one family is all of them being treated like one family. You can't marry into a family and then ostracize the biological members of that family. If your goal is to divide and conquer, sweetheart, don't enter that family. Go build one of your own. Oh, wait, you did. And then you broke it up as well. I think your problem is that you don't have a value system to lean on. You don't have any common sense, and you certainly don't value the relationships between parents and their children. I haven't seen or heard you talk about your children in any capacity since you became queen. Your whole goal has been having the spotlight for yourself. You completely abandoned being a mother. And sure, your children are grown, but prior to that, they were painting you as this family lady that's going to be good for the royal family. And they tried to soften your image so bad. Honey, you got that crown and went the hell on about your business. Kids who? And you sure don't say anything when William is bullying your kids. That might be the only thing I agree with William on, except he should be bullying you. Now listen, Harry and Meghan aren't your business. If you want some business to tend to outside of the work that you're not doing, why don't you focus on the pedophiles in your family? The family you married into and are now trying to control. Charles needs to put a leash on his Rottweiler. And more to that, above all else, I have been trying to figure out for years who Camilla looks like. I have finally figured it out. This is who Camilla has been looking like to me all this time. And now that I've said it, I can't unsee it. Camilla, why don't you go worry about moisturizing that dead skin on your skull that you call a face and stop worrying about Harry and Meghan or anybody else you're taking up time bothering? Nobody cares what you think. You're ugly. You don't have any values. Nobody respects you. You're ugly on the inside and on the outside. Girl, at least you're consistent. But my God, how did you accomplish that? Everybody on this earth has some kind of redeemable quality. A lot of people who have downsides have upsides. You might be one of the few individuals I've ever come across with absolutely zero upsides, all downsides. Now go worry about your elongated, long, drooping backside and stop worrying about people who aren't bothering you. Go do real work. If you want to be queen, you fought so damn hard to be queen. Go do something with it. Anyway, what do y'all think about this? Let me know in the comment section below. And no offense to anybody with a long drooping backside. This is just at Camilla. Thank you so much for watching the SharionSade YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching my content. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this video by hitting the thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe by hitting the subscribe button. And don't forget to comment along the way. If you feel so inclined, please don't forget to share so that more people can find us. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Now let's get back to the video. Sorry for going off the rails at the end there. You know how you talk about something long enough and you get mad? Because I was talking about it and I was rethinking the stuff that she said in her mind, because the article said that she planned to make Harry and Meghan's life as difficult as possible if they return to England, even for a visit. And it pissed me off because it's one thing I cannot stand is a person who believes in dividing and conquering. It's just like, you could have just left them alone. If you don't want to be in a blended family, don't marry into a blended family. That is a choice. If you do not want to marry a man with children and you want children with him by yourself, then don't marry a man who has kids. And if you are with someone who is not treating your children well, you are the problem. Because right out the gate, the moment somebody even looks like they have some animosity towards your kids, that's up to you to check. That is up to you to check. I have told this story before, but when I was dating long ago, before I got with my husband now, we've been together 13 years, but when I was dating out on the town, going to dinner with people, I canceled a day before because I think my niece had something going on. And I was like, hey, I actually just found out my niece has something she wants me to go to. I'm going to go to that with her. Can we reschedule? And he was like, you're rescheduling on me for your niece. Already out the gate, the tone. Because see, one of these things is permanent and one of these things is not. My niece is my niece. She gonna be my niece no matter who I choose to bring into my life, subsequently bringing them into her life. No, she's not my child, but the point that I'm making is at the time she was 5 years old and I was her aunt. That is my top priority because I didn't have kids of my own. If I had kids, she would be right up there with my children, but she was my top priority. So when she said, hey, Amy, I'm doing this thing, can you come or whatever? And I was like, yeah, I can come. There's nothing else more important. I let him know 24 hours in advance and he said, you're gonna cancel on me for your niece? I almost blacked out on that man just from the tone. And I said, well, you know what? This is text. This might not be the way I'm taking it. I already don't like for you to question me when it comes to her. Just mind your business. But be glad I gave you a reason. But then I called him and I was like, hey, I think I'm misreading the tone. And he was like, I just think it's crazy. Like, that's not your child. Why are you making any plan adjustments based on her? I said, don't ever call me again. And I said some other stuff too, but just the audacity. This was our like third date. It wasn't even nothing deep. But regardless, it could be the day before our wedding. You take a tone like that with me about my loved one, I'm going to be looking at you crazy if I don't do a whole lot more. And that's just my niece. It could have been my cousin. It could have been my sister. It could have been my brother. It doesn't matter. If my family is important, and if you have a problem with adjusting to an established unit and not integrating, but you have a problem adjusting, then you're not the person for me. The person for me is going to integrate into my family, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do and compromise however I need to compromise to make sure that happens. I'm not going to let anybody be hung out to dry or mistreated, but I'm certainly going to manage your integration. That has to be something you're willingly doing, though. And I'm pretty sure that man's ear is still ringing. And he messaged me like maybe 2 years later and was like, I still have tinnitus, LOL. and see, I hardly get over things. When I read it, I said, ha. And it was, I wouldn't even give the man a laugh. I was just like, the nerve of you to question my, like, I still get irritated. Let's move on. I feel that way as an aunt. I cannot imagine having a child or children, especially children who have lost their other biological parent, and letting some soul-sucking demon with the crusty ass lips like Camilla come in. No matter how much history we have, you will never have enough history to undo a biological bond or even just a familial bond. When you have children, step, blended, biological, adoption, foster, when the children and minors are in your care, the other adults in your life need to be managed to create a safe environment. And if the people in your life cannot create a safe environment for the minors in your life, then you need to get those people out. That is your job. And the nerve of people, the moment the child grows up and says, you know what? I kind of realized you didn't treat me so good, or you left me vulnerable to being treated real bad, or you treated me bad for no reason. The moment they say that, you competing with my spouse. I just want to make this clear for anybody who needs to hear this. Children should not ever be considered competing for their parent, especially when your spouse is concerned, because here's what: your child and your spouse occupy two completely different spaces in your life. And if you are comparing them, that tells me already out the gate, you are triangulating those two people in your life. So if one of them is feeling mistreated and the other one is given the license to mistreat, you are the problem. You didn't vet the people coming into your child's life. You already are the one in the wrong. And then two, the moment you realize someone was mistreating your child, it's not about that's my wife, that's my husband, I'm going to stand by them. Sweetheart, when you have a child, they depend on you to keep them safe. I don't give a shit if the child is 3 or 30. If somebody comes into your space on your behalf and treats your kid like shit, you are allowing that, and you are the problem. And I don't understand how it could get by you. I don't understand how you could have anybody in your space, especially when your children are minors, and it just doesn't occur to you to pay attention to how your kids are reacting to this person or how this person is speaking to your kids. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine my child coming to me and saying, hey, you and your spouse excluding me from a Father's Day post. Your actual biological child was excluded from a Father's Day post, but your stepchildren were included. That hurt my feelings. And you say, well, you competing with my spouse on Father's Day? And then when you go no contact, the first thing out of their mouth is, well, I don't know what's wrong with her. She went crazy. Yep, sure did. Undid all that conditioning, deprogrammed, and got the hell on with my life. Now, see, let me stop. I just genuinely dislike people who intentionally move into a space or integrate into a space where they don't like what's already established. If you didn't like what you saw, why didn't you go get somebody who didn't have children? Charles allows Camilla to do what she does. Camilla's an evil son bitch, but he sees her for what she is and he accepts her for what she is. That's on him to protect his kids, grown or not. I cannot imagine somebody coming into my life and saying, hey, I need some good press. Do you mind if I use Romeo? Romeo is my schnauzer. Can I use Romeo for some good press? I would put a boot in their face. I would be like, no, excuse you. I remember I had a good friend one time and me and her were talking about moving in together. And she was like, but I don't like dogs. Now I had my dog at that point 5 years. And she's like, but I don't like dogs. Well, we won't be moving in together because my dog goes with me. And not that I put my dog over my friendship, but if you're going to go head to head with my dog, that's on you. Good luck. And I'm that way about a dog. I can't imagine if I had two sons, not just two sons in general, but two sons who'd also lost their other parent. Charles is wrong as the day is long. But from what I hear, Charles don't have a problem with selling his kids out. Not only will he sell his kids out to drive, but don't he have a kid in Australia, is it, that he don't claim? Allegedly. Let me put my allegedly back up, because again, we don't know for sure. This is just a discussion. Whatever is going on, I just feel like Camilla setting her sights back on Harry and Meghan. Girl, read the room. Can she read? Read the room. You have Andrew doing what he doing and been doing. Staff strikes and all kinds of stuff. Again, thank you, Mina Ruth, for letting me know. You have Andrew doing what he doing. Edward being named, so we can expect more to come out from that. William being entangled in this in some way. And Sarah losing her mind. What else is new? You could focus on A, B, C, or D. And here you are talking about the Sussexes. But the Sussexes. Girl, you know what I think the problem is? I think the issue is she doesn't hate the Sussexes. I think she needs to follow their blueprint. Girl, go get some sun. Go do something that feeds the soul. Maybe make a friend. I don't. What can we offer this woman? Go get you some business. As my grandmama used to say, my grandmama would be on the phone for a long time and I'd be sitting in the kitchen listening to her talk and gossip and gab. She would notice me after a while, like I hadn't moved and my cereal bowl was empty. And she would notice me and say, Sharion, what you doing? Or she would call me Nip. Nip, what you doing? And I would say, oh, I'm just eating some cereal or just in here. And she go, you listening to my conversation. Go get you some business and get out my conversation. I have never agreed with that sweet lady more because I had no business being in her business. I should have went and got me my own business. I should have paid attention to what I was supposed to be paying attention to, not what was going on with her. And I knew everybody's business. I knew the whole congregation's information. I used to know everything about everybody. That's beside the point. She would say, go get you some business. When you are idle and you don't have anything going on, you have nothing to do, go get you some business, lest you turn out like Camilla, worrying about everybody else but themselves. And then the article went on to say that she's been drinking a lot lately. That would explain the misery. She seems like she's in one of those dead loops. Just wake up, get sauced, be angry, pass back out. Go throw a weight around, pass back out. She's the bully. As I was reading those details in the article, and again, that article is from Globe Magazine. It's in the description box below under sources. Hold on, y'all. This is why I try to finish my thought before I read a comment. I'm going to put the comment up there, finish my thought, and then I'm going to respond to the comment. It needs to be seen immediately. Anyway, this comment says, actually, Camilla has been in the sun too long without sunscreen, looking like old blue leather. No, wait, that's a very specific look, and that is the most accurate comment I have ever read about Camilla. That's true. Sorry. Hold on, because I don't want my mascara to get in my eye. That is so accurate. You are right. She just needs to moisturize and take a break. But no, her and the little hard wig she be thrown on top of that empty head. She just gets on my nerves. But imagine saying, oh, I'm going to focus on the Sussexes when you could just pay attention to what's right in front of you, sweetheart. You don't need to look past all the drama and melee that's right in front of you to look at the Sussexes in Montecito, even though I know you're probably stalking them. I think you need to focus on what's in front of you. But see, you got to watch those kind of people that come into a situation and immediately create disharmony. You have to watch those kinds of people. Sometimes people can come in and spot the cracks and say, hey, this could be better. That could be better. This is something. Okay. Fresh eyes are to be valued, but you have to watch a person who comes in and immediately starts sowing seeds of dissent. Protect your families from that stuff. I don't care, as one of my professors, Professor Price used to say at Southwest, he would say, I don't care about none of that activity. I don't care if these little guys and these little girls are the most attractive thing in the world. Take care of your home and take care of yourself first and foremost. Don't ever sacrifice your well-being or the well-being of the people you love for somebody you like. It's just never going to pay off. Protect yourself, protect your life, and protect what's good in this world. And I could not agree more. Charles needs to wake up. And apparently, now I know my mic cut out a little bit in the segment. But apparently the article stated that whenever Charles is, he's not doing well, he's sick, but whenever he tries to get up and get out of bed and do anything, she starts to hound him. She follows him around. She tries to get him to lay back down. Like, she likes him to be out of pocket and out of sight so that she can run everything. She's the bully. And as I was going through the article and reading the instances of how she was bullying staff and people were not liking the way she was speaking to people, apparently she just been speaking to Kate all kinds of ways, been turning her ass every way but a loose verbally, been being mean to Kate, and that's fine. Those two witches can squabble it out, but she's essentially been really mean to the staff, and that's where my problem lies. When they were saying how she was literally a tyrant is how they described her. Sources described her as a tyrant, allegedly. It just brought to mind a bunch of other very false accusations that had been made about another royal, and the key words that were used in those accusations years ago, and then hearing them again, but with Camilla, and it made so much sense with Camilla. I said, every accusation is a confession. I knew it. I was not crazy. I knew it. I feel like there's several bullies in that family. And for those that are not bullies, they're certainly enablers for many things. And I think as these files continue to come out, we will learn just how many things they are enabling. Hi, Nighty Night. Nighty Night says, can you believe Camilla is head of a domestic abuse charity? That still disgusts me. I can't even believe that she's associated with one, considering she attempted to facilitate the mental degradation of Diana. That woman gaslit Diana. She manipulated her. She mistreated her. She tried to bully her. The fact that when Diana confronted her for sleeping with Charles, that woman said, you have everything you want. You have the husband. You're beautiful. You have the desire of many men. Why can't I have Charles? Girl, could you imagine somebody coming up being like, hey, can I have your spouse? But you have so many other blessings. Let me have your spouse. Let me just take him for a ride. Oh my gosh. Again, these are boot to the face moments that I fear were missed. I just feel like some things should require an immediate and swift boot to the face. And Camilla is about 3 boots deep with me right now. I couldn't believe she said that. Anyway, let's continue. Hi, SKT. SKT says, Camilla is a wicked stepmother straight out of a grim fairy tale. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the drunkest bee of all? When I started reading that, I didn't know where we were going. But this is accurate. According to the article now, allegedly, this is accurate. Hi, Nobody said, what a rant. Sorry, because when I have been plagued by something and then I get triggered, I just get to yapping. But yes, I feel very strongly about that because you can't control who your parents are, unfortunately. And there are people who would pick their parents in every lifetime, and I love hearing about that. I'm kind of like that about my Mia mom and my granddaddy John Morris. I would pick them in every single lifetime, but I would probably never pick my parents again. And that's heartbreaking to say because you grow up adoring your parents and think they're perfect and amazing, and you would do anything for them, and then you become an adult and you establish values, and you're like, holy shit, you hated me. Oh my God, like you really did not want me to be here. And you start to realize that, and you have to go through your own grieving process of being, I guess, unwanted. It's a weird thing because when you're an adult, you don't need your parents, but it's nice to know they love you. And then when you realize that they don't, that's one of those things that have you like, am I lovable? So you have to go through a whole process of acceptance, and it's a grief process. But when you come out on the other side and you start establishing relationships, like real valuable reciprocal relationships, there's no going back. Once you've been treated well, you can't go back. And that's one of the biggest blessings is, with discernment, you can see people and things for who they are, and you have to grieve what you see because it's the loss of what you thought and what you believed and what you hoped for. But then once you are operating in authenticity, there is no going back. That's part of the reason why when we were talking about Prince Harry and people are like, oh, he's going to move back to the UK. I'm like, he might return more, which is something he's always said he wanted to do. He wanted to always have the fluidity to go back and forth. But I doubt he would ever return. Once you have seen how low somebody will go with you and how much they are willing to harm you, you can never trust them. But then too, once you have been loved well and lived in peace, you cannot return to chaos. You literally cannot. After I went through a healing process and I integrated back into some of those spaces, just visiting or just here and there, just catching up, and the gossip and the back talk and the snark and just the infighting, I was averse to it. Like I couldn't even stomach it. Like my brain was like, girl, if you don't get out of here and go get you some hot links and go home. And that's exactly what I did. I just couldn't even stomach it. Couldn't even stay around long enough to mediate. I was just like, oh, I don't know how y'all do this shit no more. And got out of there. Like, so I say that to say family dynamics are really difficult, especially when there's toxic cycles involved. And if everybody wants to heal and everybody wants to move forward and everybody wants to blend and integrate, then it's a wonderful thing. You have challenges, but it's a wonderful thing. But for people who come in and say, I don't want this, and they're not held to account, usually the people who suffer are the vulnerable parties and the innocent. And that is heartbreaking. They often reap all the downsides of adults' oversights and laziness or lack of action. And that is just such a sad thing to me. But when they become adults, watch out, world. Once they know they can survive on their own, it's no going back. Hi, Mina Ruth. Mina Ruth said he was an idiot. I believe you were talking about Charles, in which case I agree wholeheartedly. Absolutely. Hi, Gwendolyn Daniel. Gwendolyn Daniel says he was selfish as hell. I believe these comments are Charles, if I'm not mistaken. And I could not agree more. All of them are just so, what's the word? Insidious. Sometimes I wonder, and I know a lot of it is conditioning, but also sometimes we don't process everything going around us. Our brain protects us from things that we should see, but maybe we don't register right off the bat. But sometimes when we get into a calm place and then we start reviewing certain things that we saw, heard, or experienced, and it starts to become very clear how the gravity of the things that we've encountered or experienced, I wonder what that process was like for Prince Harry. Like some of the things that he described in Spare, I wonder living with that for a few more years. I wonder if he would describe the feelings that he has now the same. I wonder what his take would be on some of those occurrences. Not occurrences like Todger Tales, but like occurrences like Camilla taking his bedroom, even though there were other rooms in the house for her sewing room. Just intentionally bullying. See, that's what I'm talking about. When I go back to talking about family dynamics, see, having a bedroom for each of your kids, but then when your partner's kid comes, they have to sleep on the floor of the workout room or on the couch, even though you have an extra room. See, it's stuff like that. That's a separate isolated incident, but I'm saying it's in the same vein of like intentional mistreatment that a parent doesn't check. It's very sad. The fact that Charles didn't say, why does your sewing room have to be my son's room? I'm a firm believer in kids should always have the option to come home. You never know what the world is going to do and throw at them. It's always good to have a safe space to return to regroup. For kids who don't have that, my heart is with you. I fully understand. When my grandparents' house was sold, it killed me because it was the first time in my life where I actually felt like, oh my God, I'm really out here raw dogging the hell out of life. Like I can't return to 8th Street. Oh my God. Never conceptualized the fact that my granddaddy would ever sell his homes. I always just knew like if worse come to worse, I have somewhere to roll out to. And then it just was like, okay, girl, I guess it's you sink or swim, but it's difficult. But at that time, Harry was young. He was still a teenager, or he was the early 20s. That time of life is so damn chaotic. I can't imagine someone taking my child's room, especially for something as small as a sewing room. I would have been like, now listen, you are intentionally trying to make my child feel out of place. Stop it. Honestly, I wouldn't have had to say all that because the moment I realized there was animosity or any kind of trepidation with her, I would have put her out. We can't do this. If he wouldn't do it for his wife, I had at least hoped he would have done it for his children. But no, sometimes I wonder if it's love or some kind of manipulation or if she just has something on him. Or maybe he's just stupid. Like I might be just giving him too much credit. He might just be stupid. But you would think for someone with such a fractured relationship with his own parents and that being such a key component of who he is and why he operates the way he does, you would think that Charles would be adamant about keeping the relationship with him and his sons like solid. You would think that would be something he's like, no, I don't waver on this because I know what it's like when you don't have that. I don't know. Maybe. Gwendolyn Daniel went on to say, those people do not have souls. They're really demons. I completely agree. And I believe we're still talking about the trafficking. I agree. If any of you have read some of the things that are coming out, especially this past week, how have you been coping? Because I've been limiting what I read because some of it was just so bizarre. I'm like, can we please go back to putting trigger warnings on these things? I don't want to just scroll past these pictures. I would prefer not to. It was about the guy who you were talking about, but yes, thank you. Yes, you were absolutely right. It applied to both of them for sure. Hi, Christina. Christina says the Windsors are a greedy, grasping, grimy, greasy, grotesque clan. I know that's right. Come through, alliteration. I love it. This is so accurate, though. This is so accurate. It's so weird that they have any protocols at all when they don't even bother to have a value system. You would think that the length of someone's hem and the way they wear their shoes and what color they wear on what day, you would think all of that would be secondary to just basic human decency and humanity. You would think that would have to come first. Like, you can't tell me what nail color I should wear and there's a predator next door. Like, we got to handle one of these things before the other. You can't get mad at me for making a joke about trooping the color and saying it's colorful. You can't get mad about that when on that same balcony is an abuser who abused girls who you are currently covering for. I need you to prioritize one of these things, and the trooping the color joke is just not it. Nail color is just not it. Hem of my garment is just not it. I need you to focus on what's for real. And they refuse to focus on what's for real. The fact that anybody could bring up anything regarding protocol, especially any kind of aesthetic or visual protocol or any kind of like clothes or anything like that, the fact that people will bring that up but will completely hop, skip, and jump over Andrew and all the things that he's accused of. We can't have a conversation about the royal families if it doesn't start and end with Andrew and his behavior first. I don't want to hear boo about what you hate about Prince Harry and what he shoulda, coulda, woulda done. Nikki, mind your business, Nicki Minaj. Talking about what he coulda, shoulda, woulda done, blah, 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 when you are literally living with a pedophile. And that applies to both the royal family and Nicki Minaj. I'm starting to see a commonality here. I'm surprised she wasn't in the files. If it weren't for their anti-blackness, she likely would have been. Witness statements. I want to see arrests made. I want to see people ousted from their positions at universities, the White House, wherever else they may dwell, the royal family. I want to see swift and immediate, stark consequences. I'm sick of seeing people just, oh yeah, we did that one thing. Why do we need to know about it if you're not going to do anything about it? I'm glad we know about it so we can hold them accountable. But what was the point of all this? You know, sometimes people say, oh, the world is a stage. These are the moments where I'm like, shit, is it? Is this reality? This feels too surreal to me. Like, something is wrong here. There should be people storming the White House right now and dragging that weird man with his orange ass, wear gloves because he'll stain your hands, dragging his orange ass out of the White House. Like, how much more evidence do we need? And we also need to be digging up those golf courses. Whatever needs to be done, something needs to be done. Let's continue. Hi, Gwendolyn Daniel. Gwendolyn Daniel says they really treated Harry like the redheaded stepchild. Heartbreak. If that is not the most literal statement, yes, they did. You know, this is kind of something that I feel applies here too. But sometimes people, and I've heard this my whole life, sometimes people can see your light before you do, or they can see your potential before you do, or they can just see what's special about you. And the goal for them, since they can't acquire that or harvest it in any way, their goal is to get you to reject it so that you won't ascend beyond them. And sometimes that can be your parent. Sometimes that can be a sibling. Sometimes that can be a friend. Have you ever had somebody that everything that is unique about you or special about you or something you're talented in, they always have something to say to cut it down or to minimize it or belittle it in some way? That's probably the best tell that you can have. They see your light. They see what's special about you. Harry was personable, is personable. Harry is a kind-hearted person. He's very dutiful. He's just very well-liked. But above all else, he just has that very kind spirit about him. People, animals, kids, they're all attracted to him in some way. And people tend to immediately put their guard down around him because they feel safe. Very similar to his mom. They have that light about them. And then, of course, he married someone who had that light about them. And I feel like other people who either don't have that or can't see it within themselves or don't take the time to, or don't nurture it within themselves, they don't want to spend the time doing the work to pull out the best in themselves. They want to spend in the time to pulling it out of you. I don't want you to be able to have advantages over me, or I don't want you to be able to ascend beyond me. I don't want you to be more liked than me. It's so crazy though. The people who are the most unlikable want to be liked the most. And I'm like, you could start just by not being an asshole. Like, that's a starting point. You could just be nice. Like you could be kind or you could just be quiet. That's always my go-to. If I'm not in the mood to be kind, I'll be quiet. When people are like, what's wrong? Why you not talking? Probably because I done peeped something and you getting on my nerves and I'm trying to be nice about it. But I'm quiet first. I'm not going to kill the mood or pull the energy out of the room. It feels like the royal family, they saw Harry's light. And maybe even William had it as a child as well. And maybe he just grew up and was like, you know what? It doesn't make sense. I already know I'm gonna have to be king. I'm gonna have to be around these people. I may as well assimilate. I don't know. But based on how he was described as a child, I don't think he ever had the light. I think he was already Charles's son, if you know what I mean. I think he was 100% Charles's son, that decrepit spirit with nothing on it, just negative, dark, gloomy. Some of the things that his childhood friends said that he used to say to them and the way he would bully them and threaten to behead them and all kinds of crazy shit. I said, that's not something normal kids say. Y'all should have been concerned about that. No, especially since this person will grow up to one day be king. No. But anyway, but I feel like Harry always, even though he would get the red mist, that's just a temperament. That's just a mood. As a person, he just always seemed to have that light. And I feel like those people saw it in him and wanted to stomp it out. When they couldn't harvest or control it, they wanted it gone. And unfortunately for them, he said no and walked away. See, that's the thing too. When somebody is special and then you have no leverage over them, that's a dangerous person. When someone has a special quality, especially kindness, when a person is just an inherently good person and then you don't have leverage, you can't control it, evil people cannot stand that. And what's even crazier, it's like, I think it comes from a place of mistrust. This is just me talking out loud. I do think it comes from a bit of a mistrust place. Because I feel like they don't trust themselves to do the right thing in certain situations. So they can't imagine a person being genuinely kind or being genuinely humane or genuinely caring about others. I feel like in their minds, I can't possibly fathom being a nice person or just doing the right thing when no one's watching. That's not how people are made. So I don't trust this act you're putting on. I think you're putting on an act because no one's that good. No, you're not that good. And that's a problem internally for you, not for Harry. And I feel like they couldn't control it and they couldn't harvest it and they wanted it gone. And then he had the nerve to go and not only marry someone with that same light, but marry someone that they also had no leverage over. See, with everybody else, Sarah Ferguson is a wonderful example. With everybody else, do you want to be attached to this family? Do you want to have the things that we have or the crumbs from the plate of the things that we have? Do you want to be associated with us? Do you want to be validated by us? Then you will do what we say and you will shut your mouth. Then you get a Sarah Ferguson. When they try to pull that shit on someone who's been independent for a very long time and they know their worth, that's a no-go. So what do? In typical narcissist fashion, if we can't control her or abuse her or keep her wrapped up in this toxic cycle, we're going to try to control how other people see her. And if you go with her, we're going to do the same to you. Even let harm befall one of you or your baby. They put those people through the ringer all because they wanted to be front page of a whole bunch of magazines and the news and have favor in the media. Like, that's so lame. Do you know how low and how small and how evil you have to be willing to hurt your family for no reason? Let's just start there. To be willing to harm your family, you already have to be a pretty low soul. But then two, to be willing to harm your family so that other people will like you. The rest of those people need to get some damn help. And it starts and ends with the parents. That's something they absolutely should have been managing. You should manage people, your children and your family unit to see who they are outside of their obligations. As people, they should be loved and nurtured to be the best version of themselves they can be, regardless of what they're obligated to outside of themselves. And I think that's something Diana was trying to do. As a matter of fact, I know that's something Diana was trying to do because she talked about it in her book. She wanted her sons to have humanity. She wanted her sons to recognize the good in the world and try to perpetuate that. She wanted her sons to turn away from the evil in the world. She wanted her sons to help people and use their positions to help people. And only one of those sons carried that torch. And people try to stomp out that light. But what's for you is for you. Anyway, I have talked y'all's ears off. I apologize for all my mini rants. This is a sensitive topic. Hearing that she was targeting Harry and Meghan, and first of all, just doing that in general is trashy, but you're going to target Harry and Meghan when you are literally living amongst pedophiles and you yourself are a mistress. Like, girl, how does anybody even entertain her or give her the time of day? It's pathetic. Anyway, cheers to her putting some Vaseline on that lip. But that's all I have for y'all today. I hope you enjoyed today's live stream. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. If you haven't already, please don't forget to go ahead and like this. I was about to say this video, this live stream, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to share so that more people can find me. And I will see y'all next time. Bye.